Then he would make rounds at 7, at which point the inflammation from the surgery would have decreased and the patient would feel really good. It would also pee off all their post-surgical water. And they'd be all happy and feel real good and think that Dr. Zudi was, God. Then the next day, we gave a half a dose, half a gram. Actually, I think it was 400 milligrams of salmeterol. And then the third day, nothing. And by the third day, they were cranky because they didn't have the release of the relief from the inflammation anymore. So I slowed down to make sure you understood you always wean steroids. Now we have Addison's disease. So Addison's disease, there's not enough glucocorticoids or mineralocorticoids. This is an autoimmune disorder. So these people have a low blood sugar. They don't have enough sodium. They're dehydrated. They have a low blood pressure. They are craving salt. And their skin is going to turn brown, even though they haven't been out in the sun. The reason's because ACTH is in the category of hormones called the melanocortins, which include melanocyte-stimulating hormone. All right, adrenal cortex is not doing its job, therefore ACTH goes up. My markers. Okay. The adrenal cortex is not doing its job, so ACTH goes up. This pen's bad. ACTH goes up, which causes melanocyte-stimulating hormone to go up. Melanocyte-stimulating hormone goes up, and so more melanin is being produced and being deposited into the skin. And it makes them turn brown. This is a Caucasian woman. How she doesn't look it. Notice that there are streaks of pigment in her fingernails. Kind of hard to see, but there's strong pigmentation in the creases of her hand. There's pigmentation in her gums. So the melanin is being deposited everywhere. Who was that? That's John F. Kennedy. Look how tan he is. John F. Kennedy had Addison's disease. Probably autoimmune polyendocrine syndrome. So he had not just Addison's disease, but he also had Hashimoto's hypothyroidism. All right, I'll talk briefly about the presidential debates of 1960. So going into the presidential race at that time in 1959, the two leading candidates were John F. Kennedy, who was 41 years old and Catholic, and Richard M. Nixon, who was in his 50s, late 50s, and had been in Congress for a long time, and Protestant. And going into the debate, the first ever televised presidential debate, Nixon was ahead. And the reason was because JFK was only 41 years old. He was young. And he was Catholic. And the American people were afraid that the Pope would run the country if they elected this young man who was too immature to be president. So he wasn't doing as well as Nixon until we got into the debate, televised. All right, the televised debate showed a young, vibrant, healthy, tanned, strong man, a leader. And then on the other side, we had Richard Nixon, who was shifty and sweating and stammering and did not have a good look to him at all. He looked weak. He looked sneaky. Turns out he was. We were right. But the tides turned. JFK was elected president. Now then, the next time that Nixon ran in 1968, he did not allow there to be televised debates because he didn't look good on television. I don't know, I just find that interesting. Now, no one said publicly that JFK had Addison's or hypothyroidism. And his doctors kept it quiet, so he wound up getting elected. All right, now stress and the adrenal gland. So you people, you, under high stress will have increased cortisol, which means you will have increased blood sugar, which will lead you to a greater tendency toward type 2 diabetes. You will also have a suppressed immune system, which means you now get sick easier. So gotta get the stress under control. This is called general adaptation syndrome, gas. It also inhibits the hippocampus, as you know, which is involved in memory. All right, any questions? We'll go through the last of the endocrine glands. All right, pineal gland looks like a pine cone. That's why it gets its name. It puts out melatonin, which is different than melanin. It is the hypothalamus that controls it. That particular nucleus of the hypothalamus is called the suprachiasmatic because it's directly above where the optic nerves cross. So it is reset with light every day. Melatonin. Elderly people have less melatonin. They don't need less sleep, they have less melatonin. So they benefit from doses of melatonin, as does anyone who needs to get ready for a trip overseas so that they can prevent or recover from jet lag.
I always wondered where they get that melatonin. Do you know where it comes from?
I don't.
I mean, I know you can buy it over the counter, but I don't know the source.
I don't know the source either.
Okay, I'll Google it later.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to Google and see. I don't know whether or not it's recombinant DNA, which would be fine, or is it ground up pig pineal glands? Now you make me want to know. Oh my God.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why would you have a reaction to that? Like whenever I take melatonin, I wake up 3 hours later in like a panic.
I don't know.
I don't know either. But I can't have anything with melatonin in it to make me sleep. It's not necessarily a nightmare because I don't remember anything. I wake up and I'm panicked. Like I had a nightmare or something.
Look at all the things melatonin's doing. Yeah, that didn't tell me. I thought it would. Okay, source melatonin, source exogenous melatonin, pharmacological. Okay. Talking about what it does, pharmacological doses. There's the action of pharmacology.
See, they don't want us to know where it comes
They don't want to know, it's a secret. Oh my God. Let's see if this says anything. Notice that I am doing edu sites because I don't want a bunch of .coms giving me crap. Has antioxidant effects. Cardioprotective properties. Improves sleep associated with menopause. Maybe I should be taking it. Oh, it does not appear to relieve other symptoms such as hot flashes, which is what wakes me up. Okay, never mind. Uses, wow. It doesn't say. We don't know where it comes from.
Is it .org? Is that pretty accurate?
No, not necessarily. Because that could be any kind of group that comes that, you know, they have opinions. Let's try .gov. It's a melatonin receptor agonist. I don't know. Just would have to spend some more time looking at all of this. Produced by the pineal glands. Like, I don't know. Okay, well, we'll just keep going. thymus, part of the immune system. It is producing T lymphocytes. It's the final processing for the T lymphocytes. And it produces thymopoietin, which keeps the T lymphocytes going. The GI tract puts out gastrin. Gastrin stimulates hydrochloric acid and therefore pepsin. When you are taking a proton pump inhibitor, okay, proton pump inhibitor because you have reflux disorder, that means you, well, let's look at the feedback. So gastrin is going to cause HCl production. All right? If there's high HCl, right, then it'll stop the gastrin. If we take a proton pump inhibitor like Prilosec, there is no negative feedback. So what will the levels of gastrin be? They will be high. Yeah. All right, the problem with taking something like Prilosec, we need a low pH to liberate calcium and magnesium so they can be absorbed. So patients who are on chronic, who daily take Prilosec, are going to have problems with not enough calcium, not enough magnesium, and they might have to take additional supplements like muscle cramps and that sort of thing. But there was recently a study that linked Prilosec with dementia. Small study. They're not saying if you take Prilosec, or it's common ones too, the associated drugs, you'll develop dementia. They're just saying these people in this group who had dementia also took these drugs. Now, if you stop taking the Prilosec, how much hydrochloric acid are you going to produce? Look at this. A lot. What's going to happen to the pH of your stomach? Down. What's going to happen to your heartburn? Up. Yes. So if you have clientele who want to stop taking Prilosec, they need to be aware of something called rebound heartburn. And this is why, because the Prilosec was causing more gastrin to be produced. That more gastrin continues even after they're off the Prilosec and for a while. And so it'll take them a while to get over that. All right, secretin puts out pancreatic enzymes. Cholecystokinin causes the gallbladder to contract to release bile. So this one is put out if there's fats in the stomach. We have these two we've already talked about, GIP and GLP. They're the ones that, in the presence of carbs, cause insulin to be released. And then we have guanylin that causes intestinal secretion of chloride so that we can get rid of salt and water in the feces if needed. Adipose tissue puts out leptin, which suppresses the appetite. And there was a lot of excitement when this was first discovered. They thought, oh, we have a cure for obesity. And it's like, no, it turns out it only explains fat minds, not fat people. There's more than that. All right, ghrelin increases hunger. If you don't get enough sleep, you have high ghrelin, low leptin. Makes you hungry all the time. Like I said, and they're getting really excited about all these hormones, trying to figure out how to manipulate them to control obesity. The heart puts out 4 hormones, which are all about decreasing blood volume. Blood volume is too high. Because the heart is stretched, it puts out these hormones that cause water, salt with water, causes blood vessels to dilate, causes potassium to be dumped. The skin is the final step under ultraviolet light to produce vitamin D. We already know vitamin D is important for calcium absorption, but here is the key part. It increases anti-inflammatory messages. So people who have low vitamin D have greater colon, prostate, ovarian cancer, and heart disease. Here's its little mechanism, how it's made. Here's all the disorders that are possible because of low vitamin D. So vitamin D is now part of general practitioners' little pattern, making sure that their patients have enough vitamin D. And there's the pathway for vitamin D in terms of calcium production.